Manufactured by Sikorsky, the UH and MH-60 Blackhawks are four-bladed, twin-engine helicopters that can fulfill a variety of roles. Introduced in 1979, the Black Hawk is a well-armored and mobile platform for transporting infantry. It can also act as command units and as medevacs. They're also able to be fitted with ESSS stub wings and external tanks, allowing them to cover much longer distances. The helos flown in Mogadishu were UH and MH-60Ls. These were upgrades from the original design and featured more power and lifting capability. In the battle, the Black Hawks were used as transports for the Rangers and also as command ships. Additionally, the UH-60 Black Hawks carried a SAR team, or a combat search and rescue team, that was able to rope down to the first crash site. Fortuitously, the Black Hawks had Kevlar armored floor panels which later provided cover. Generally well fortified, the Black Hawk and its fellow gunships were considered invincible by the Somalis until they were able to damage one on September 25, 1993. The Black Hawk airframe has also been used for Marine One presidential helicopters, and much like the Little Birds, the Black Hawk can be outfitted with a variety of weaponry depending on its mission. It can mount miniguns and chain guns, rockets, anti-tank and anti-air missiles, along with mine dispersal systems. Heavily modified H-60 airframes were used in the 2011 raid to capture Osama bin Laden in Abbottabad, Pakistan. The OH-58D Kiowa is a scout and reconnaissance helicopter that was used during the Battle of Mogadishu by the U.S. forces. It would normally be requested by UN forces to assist in observing the activities of Mohamed Farrah Aidid and his followers. It is a single-engine, single-rotor model that can also be used for direct fire support. The distinctive ball atop the helicopter is its MMS, or mast-mounted sight. The MMS has range finding, thermal imaging, and visual systems that allow it to bring in information about the combat environment or to assist other units. The latest model, the Kiowa Warrior, is operated as an armed reconnaissance vehicle in support of ground troops. The P-3 Orion is a reconnaissance aircraft that was used during the battle to provide high-altitude imagery of the tactical situation below. One of the problems that arose during the battle was that the comms between the observation crafts and the units on the ground had delays and were not always one-to-one. It is also important to note that an AC-130 Spectre gunship had been requested as part of the original force package. It is debatable whether or not this could have been a deciding factor in the battle. The AC-130 has truly impressive firepower, however, it would not have allowed for the near-continuous strafing runs that were performed by the attack helicopters. The Humvee was an important vehicle during the battle, along with the 5-ton trucks that made up the initial convoy and then the subsequent ones. The Humvee is well armored against small arms fire, however the large number of RPGs that were fielded by the Somali forces made them vulnerable. This was especially true when stopped at intersections or navigating the garbage and rubble-strewn and blockaded streets of Mogadishu. The 5-ton trucks were intended for transporting larger numbers of personnel and captives, however they were not armored, and due to the urban environment, their occupants suffered fire from all sides. The Humvees were badly damaged during the fighting, though most were able to continue running on flats and broken axles. The Humvees were mounted with 50 caliber machine guns and grenade launchers. These vehicles, along with the tactics of Delta and the Rangers, allowed for swift and violent insertions and exits that usually left the Somalis with little time to prepare a counterattack. The M48 Patton was used by the Pakistani forces in the rescue convoy. One of the problems with heavy armor in a combat zone like Mogadishu is that they were not highly mobile and susceptible to mines and ambushes, and were often too large to go down the smaller streets and alleys of the cities. At the time of the battle, only 4 of the 8 M48s were operational. The U.S. political situation at the time did not want to see an increase in American forces in Somalia, and so similar fighting vehicles such as the M2 Bradley were not brought along. The Condor APC is a German-made troop transport that was used by the Malaysian UN forces to assist in the evacuating of Ranger and Delta forces in downtown Mogadishu. The Condors were fairly resistant against the usual weaponry of the Somali fighters. However, they were quite vulnerable to RPGs. The Condor was not well liked by the U.S. forces and were considered little more than armored coffins. Also compounding the coordination problem of the rescue, the Malays were not always fluent in English and were not on the same page as the U.S. forces when pulling out of the city. A technical is the term used to describe an improvised fighting vehicle. In Somalia, these often took the form of pickup trucks with larger caliber weaponry mounted on them. They were able to be quickly brought to bear and then moved at a moment's notice. Also, the low cost of the vehicle and parts and munitions made it a feasible weapon for the various militias and other armed groups in Somalia. If you've made it this far, then you should have all the basic facts and information that you will need to be able to accurately interpret the coming battle report. Here you can see a satellite image of Mogadishu. The red dot near the center is the Bakara Market. This was the heart of Aidid's power and was known as the Black Sea. This area was heavily armed and filled with militias. Just to the east of the dot is where two of Aidid's lieutenants were meeting along with other low-ranking members of his command structure. The city has roughly a 3-mile radius centered around the Black Sea neighborhood. Though it is not far at all geographically, the distance became quite large to the men of Task Force Ranger on the ground when seemingly out of every window, every doorway, and every road or alley, someone was firing at them. It is on this stage that the battle unfolds. This is the initial deployment map. The way that I've set things up is very straightforward. The icons represent the various forces on the ground and in the battle and are differentiated by their patches. Associated units or groups are linked with black bars, and red arrows indicate their positions or movement. The two men pictured are Omar Salad and Mohamed Hassan Awale. These are Aidid's political advisor and foreign minister, respectively. The light purple shaded area around the target arrow is the Black Sea neighborhood focused on the Bakara Market. Rotating clockwise, we have the 7th Battalion Frontier Force Regiment of the Pakistani Army. They held the Mogadishu soccer stadium to the north of the city. The same forces, along with the 19th Battalion Royal Malay Regiment of the Malaysian Army, were in the Newport facility. Next, the 10th Mountain Division were at the airport and with the Malays and Pakistanis made up the QRF, or Quick Reaction Force. Slightly further down the field was the U.S. Army Rangers 3rd Battalion, the 75th Ranger Regiment Bravo Company, the 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta, aka Delta Force or the D-Boys, and the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, or SOAR, which contained the Night Stalkers. Other forces such as Navy SEALs and a SAR team and others were present and will be shown later. For now, we can take a zoomed out look at the disposition of forces around the city. At our 9 o'clock position is the 10th Mountain and UN forces at the UN compound on the northwest side. Inside of this ring are the militias, mercenaries, citizens, and innocents of Mogadishu. It will also be helpful to find a few landmarks. The K4 traffic circle north of the Ranger position, and the streets Hawalwadig cutting down through the center of the city, National Street going east to west below the Bakara Market, and Armed Forces Road doing the same above the market. Intelligence comes in that there is a meeting taking place among the top members of Aidid's staff. General Garrison has a policy of only launching if a credible first-hand visual report comes in from the local spy ring, that the reconnaissance helos are seeing the same thing, and that the report is current enough to permit action. They received word that Omar Salad and Abdi Qubid Hassan Awali are in a building near the Olympic Hotel. And the picture is the Olympic Hotel. Abdi Qubid Hassan Awali and Mohamed Hassan Awali are two different people. One is Mohamed Farrah Aidid's foreign minister, and the other is his interior minister. The reason why I bring this up is because in much of the literature around the battle, there's a bit of confusion due to the commonality of the names that some of the people have. And they suspected that Qubid Hassan Awale was there, and instead it turned out that Mohamed Hassan Awale was at the target building. The Somali informant was supposed to raise the hood of his car next to the target building. However, he did that a few buildings away from the actual target building, mostly out of fear of the militias. Then the task force is alerted, and General Garrison okays the use of rockets on the Little Bird, which was assigned to the Rangers and the Delta Force, that the operation was actually going to happen rather than having to be called off moments before. The mission is to take about 1 hour and is to start at 3:30 in the afternoon. General Garrison's staff notifies General Thomas Montgomery of the 10th Mountain Division's QRF at the UN University compound that they are going to launch. The plan is for Delta and the Rangers to fly in on the Little Birds and Blackhawks. Delta is to storm the target building and seize the targets while the Rangers hold the perimeter by roping down at the four corners. Captain Steele is in charge of the Rangers, Captain Miller of Delta, and Sergeant Eversman is leading Chalk 4. Lieutenant Colonel Daniel McKnight is to lead a convoy of Humvees and 5-ton trucks to the target building and then to transport everyone out once the Somali targets have been captured. Helicopters have been flying constantly over the city in an effort to keep the Somalis on their toes and to not telegraph the impending operation. Also at this time, radios and cell phones are being jammed to cut off communication. The flight time from the Ranger base to the target building is approximately 3 minutes.